you so much. We'll move to the next talk. And this talk is by Rhythm Futela, who's a graduate student in the RNA Biology Lab in IGIB, Delhi. Ms. Futela, please go ahead and share your presentation.
Are my slides up? Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Please go ahead.
A very good afternoon to all present here. First and foremost, I'm really sorry. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Dr. Debajyoti Chakrabarty for giving me this golden opportunity to deliver a piece of work which we as a team has done in his lab under his guidance at this honorable platform. And secondly, I would like to express my gratitude towards the organizers for conducting this beautiful symposia, which I am literally enjoying since morning. So the title of my talk is Repurposing the CRISPR-Cas9 system for SARS-CoV-2 diagnosis. Before leading to the talk, with the recent announcement of CRISPR-Cas of Nobel Prize 2020, that goes to Jennifer Doudna and Charpentier for the discovery of the CRISPR-Cas9 system as a genome editing tool. So this name is now becoming a household name among the researchers. So I don't think CRISPR needs an introduction, but still I'd like to brief you about what is CRISPR-Cas9 and how this beautiful system has evolved the genome editing field. We all are much aware of the different type of immune system around among the creatures, as the eukaryotes have different type of cells, the TCRs, the BCRs, T cell receptors, B cell receptors. Mollusk has preps, arthropoda and nematoda, and different plants have RNAi as an adaptive immune system. Nobody thinks that how a single cell prokaryotes can actually needs an adaptive immunity and beautifully flourishes an adaptive immune system, which is acronymed as CRISPR. So CRISPR is clusteral regulatory interspersed space short palindromic repeats. Whenever a bacterial cells is attacked by a bacteriophage or the virus, then a certain piece of or a chunk of its fragment is actually inserted. Just a second. Is actually inserted into the CRISPR array that is present in the bacteria itself. And then the biogenesis of this CRISPR array starts, that forms the CRISPR RNA. Then there is a Cas protein that is also present at that particular CRISPR locus. And whenever the next or the subsequent attack of this virus happens, then the CRISPR the cRNA along with the Cas protein forms an ribonucleoprotein complex, which actually chucks this virus RNA or DNA genome and provides immunity to it. After this seminal discovery by scientists in the early of 20th century, the certain groups had started flourishing this CRISPR field as a genome editing technology. So what they have done is they have actually fused this CRISPR RNA with the guide, with the tracer part, and with that particular protein, that is the Cas protein. So then they have shown that this particular RNP, the Cas protein and the guide RNA, can be used to edit or cut a particular DNA of choice. So after the cut has made in a cell, so cell is very smart, then it can make a bad choice or a good choice. When the cell is making a bad choice, the repair machinery, that is the error. So whenever there is a cut in a cell, it actually provokes the repair system. So the repair system could be NHEJ, that is a non-homologous end joining, and the another repair system is the HDR, that is the homology dependent repair. Whenever there is a NHEJ that happens in a cell, the cell leads to the creation of insertions or deletion in that particular DNA locus. So that is known as indel, and the subsequent or the consequence of this NHEJ would be a knockout of that particular locus. Whenever the next if the cell makes a good choice, that is the error-free repair system, then the particular whenever there is a cut, and if the presence of the donor DNA is present in a cell, that means you can see there is a donor DNA present in a cell, and then due to the HDR machinery, this insert is getting incorporated into the particular DNA locus, and this subsequently leads to the knock-in. But the CRISPR technology does not stop here. It flourishes into various more applications, not in only genome editing, but also in the genome regulation, when the Cas9 protein fuses with the certain remodelers or the adapters, which actually leads to the epigenome modifications. Apart from this epigenome modifications, it also flourishes in the agriculture field by creating certain knockouts, knock-ins of that particular plants that we are actually looking into last 2 to 3 years down the line. But when you see last 2 years or the seminal discovery of the CRISPR-Cas9 system into diagnostics, which actually is the topic of the my presentation today, because we are now in a pandemic and we can literally know the importance of how this diagnostics is so much important to actually diagnose a particular strain or the virus or the bacterial infections. So now, but the currently available SARS-CoV-2 detection platforms are, one is the antibody test that many of the scientists have talked about today, about the neutralization antibodies and how these antibodies are actually, provoking. So the immune system that is provoked by this SARS-CoV-2 generates the neutralizing antibody. So by using this neutralizing antibody, there is a serology tests that are performing worldwide to detect the SARS-CoV-2 exposure. In that, we generally take the blood samples, and then it has this neutralizing antibody if there is an infection, because it detects the immune response to the SARS-CoV-2 exposure. Then on the strip or a capillary flow assay, there is a presence of the antigen that are present on the strip, and when the presence of the antibody is actually bound with the antigens, and then we can see the signature as a test line or the control line. So the color change indicates the previous exposure of the SARS-CoV-2 presence infection. But the second and the most important test is the nucleic acid detection, which I'm going to talk about today. So in this case, it actually diagnoses the active SARS-CoV-2 infection, as we already know that if there is a presence of the SARS-CoV-2 in that particular time frame in our body, the nucleic acid tests are actually used to detect the infections. So the sample from the swab is taken, that is the RNA sample of the virus, and this RNA sample is actually converted to DNA, and then the amplification of that particular signature or the viral load that is present, and then the interpretation of the result by the presence of the viral RNA indicates the SARS-CoV-2 infection. As I have already mentioned, there are the CRISPR-Cas field has actually flourished 2 years back in the CRISPR diagnostic field. There are so many orthologous Cas proteins. So as everybody knows that it is not only a single Cas which is present in the system. There are orthologous Cas protein which are extracted from the bacteria. So there are different types and there are different classes of the Cas system. So I'm going to talk about various the type 2 system majorly. So the detection platform, the current detection platform that uses the SARS-CoV-2, the CRISPR-Cas system for the SARS-CoV detection are the Cas13, Cas12 and other Cas protein. That is one important is the Cas9. So, but the chemistry between these different Cases are completely different. So, if we talk about the Cas13 chemistry, then the Cas13 protein actually targets the RNA. So, whenever there is a viral RNA, then this viral RNA is converted to the DNA, and then the Cas13 will only target the DNA. That is why there is a need for the transcription, that is the in vitro transcription for that particular DNA that is reverse transcribed from the viral RNA. So now the Cas13 will bind to that particular RNA that is in vitro transcribed, and there are reporters that are present in the tube. So it's an in vitro assay. So the reporters that are present in the tube. So if there is a specific signature that is found in or that is present in the tube, then there is a collateral activity that is happening. So these classes of the Cas protein, the Cas12 and the Cas13, when it binds to the substrate, that means the RNA, or the Cas12 binds to the DNA, then the collateral activity happens. So it not only cuts the target DNA, but it also cuts the reporters or the oligonucleotides that are present in the vicinity of the tube. So it cuts the reporters, and then the fluorescence signal is actually the readout mode for this assay. So all these technologies are famed as Sherlock, Crest, Carmine, Cas13, and from the Cas12, so it shares also the similar chemistry, but it targets the DNA. So this viral RNA, when converted to the DNA, the Cas12 binds to the DNA with the guide RNA, with the cRNA that is has, and then it cuts this substrate, and along with it cutting, it again shows the collateral activity, and the fluorescence readout mode is can be the fluorescence, the capture is the readout mode for the detection. So these Cas12 technologies famed as detectors, stop COVID, and Cas detect so many. You can see on the screen that there are so many reports that are actually coming up in 2020 itself, in the last 2 to 3 months. But there is one more class of the protein, that is the Cas9 protein, which comes into the picture a few months back for the detection of the SARS-CoV-2. So in this case, the chemistry is completely different from these currently using CRISPR diagnostics. So in this case, the Cas9 protein, along with the guide RNA that I have already talked about, is actually bind to the DNA substrate, and then this binding is captured by the cleavage assay or the fluorescence mode or the visual lateral flow strips that I'm going to discuss in the subsequent slides. But the as now I have talked about that the Cas9 the Cas9 SARS-CoV-2 detection is actually dependent on the binding of the Cas protein to the substrate. For that, the specificity of the Cas protein is very important in this case. So for the Cas9 based diagnostics, it depends on the direct binding with the substrate. So we know that the specificity of the Cas protein is very, very crucial, because if the Cas protein is not specific, it binds to the other target or the off target, then it might result into the false picture. So the widely used Cas protein is the SP-Cas9. The canonical Cas protein is the SP-Cas9 that is actually flourishing the CRISPR-Cas the system nowadays. So apart from these many limitations, that bigger protein size and limited PAM sites and the lower HTR efficiency, there is one more important limitation that we cannot deny, is the off-target editing. So you know that in the diagnostics, I have already mentioned that the off-targeting is very, very important. So there are so many strategies that many groups are doing or creating to reduce the off-targeting. So one is that it is the rational protein engineering of the particular Cas protein. So they are actually fusing or creating different combinations to reduce the off-targeting. And another is the directed protein evolution that is majorly done by David Liu group. And so the third important modification that people are trying is modification in the sgRNA. So it is the off-targeting is not only because of the Cas protein. Sometimes the sgRNA also binds to the other locuses. So they are also doing the modification in the sgRNA that it actually creates or leads the sgRNA to be more specific. But one more important strategy that we can use is the discovery of the orthogonal Cas protein, orthogonal Cas9 protein. So in 2016, there is a paper which talks about the FN-Cas9 protein, that is the Cas9 extracted from the Francisella novicida bacteria. So what they have done is they have trying to target the RNA with this FN-Cas9 protein. So we in our lab have tried to recapitulate, but Unfortunately, we did not get any signature of the RNA binding at that time, but interestingly, we got a very fascinating result that the FN-Cas9 not binds to the DNA, or it does not cut to the DNA, but it cuts the RNA, but it cuts the DNA very specifically. So you can see here we have tried an in vitro assay, the in vitro cleavage assay with the SP-Cas9, that is the canonical used Cas9, and the FN-Cas9 in our lab. And we have taken different locuses, the EMX and the VEGF-A locus, and we have shown that very interesting result is that the FN-Cas9 does not cut the off target, that is OT1 and OT2 are the off targets, but it cuts, the SP-Cas9 cuts the off target, and it significantly happens in various locuses, various targets that we have shown. Then down the line, we have checked whether the cleavage, that FN-Cas9 is not doing to the off target, is it because it is not binding at all to the off target, or it is binding but it is not cutting to the off target? Then we have done the binding assay, and we have shown that the FN-Cas9 does not, the KD value is so high that is not fitting in the models, in this plot. There is no binding of this FN-Cas9 with the VEGF-A off target, as you can see, but the SP-Cas9 has the KD that is 141 nanomolar, which is not very high. So we have deciphered that FN-Cas9 does not bind to the substrate with the mismatches. So you can see here in this that the FN-Cas, the off target that we have chosen is having 2 mismatches with the wild type, and in this case it is having 3 mismatches with the wild type. So from that we have tried to gain, or we have tried to actually look into the specificity of the FN-Cas9 towards mismatches, till how many mismatches it is sensitive, or it can tolerate the mismatches, or it can cut. Then because for diagnostics, a certain, or to target SNV, the single nucleotide variants that are actually prevailing the major disorders, like if you take an example of sickle cell anemia, because our lab is working on sickle cell anemia since 2 to 3 years. So we have taken this disorder because it is so prevalent worldwide, and there is a mutation, that is the single point mutation in the beta globin gene, which is leading to a sickling of the RBC from oval to the sickle shape, and it actually creates a very painful episodes. Then we have taken a strategy that the sensitivity or the mismatch tolerance of the FN-Cas9 can actually help us to diagnose the sickle cell anemia or not. So the strategy is that we have taken a guide RNA, or the guide RNA which has the one mismatch. If the FN-Cas9 does not cut the target with the 2 mismatches, then it will not cut the wild type. But if it has a single mismatch for the sickle cell anemia, or the guide RNA which has a single mismatch, it binds and cut the substrate. Then we have screened certain guide RNAs by the primer walking assay, by the nucleotide walking assay, and we have shown that yes, there is a guide RNA that we have seen is not cutting the wild type substrate because of the 2 mismatches, and it is cutting the sickle cell substrate. Then we have taken this strategy forward, and we have checked what is actually the reason why there is no cutting at all in the wild type, and there is cutting in the sickle cell substrate. Then down the line, we have again checked the binding of this particular guide RNA with that substrate, and we have seen that the guide RNA, which in the wild type substrate, there are 2 mismatches. So that is why FN-Cas9 is sensitive for the 2 mismatches. It is not, it cannot tolerate 2 mismatches. That is why it is not cutting, and it is not binding, or binding with very, very low affinity. And in the sickle cell substrate, when we have shown that the FN-Cas9 binds to the sickle cell substrate with very high affinity. That is why it is cleaving. So from that we have got a clue that yes, FN-Cas9 binds to the substrate having two mismatches with very low affinity and one mismatch with very high affinity, and then it's cutting to the sickle cell substrate. Now, how from this sickle cell diagnostics, how the Feluda comes into the picture, that I'm going to talk about is, as we have already talked about, as we have now having a strategy that FN-Cas9 is can tolerate only single mismatch but does not tolerate two mismatches. Then if you want to detect a particular disorder in a field, then there is no point of taking so many gel apparatus that we are actually searching for, or we are the readout mode cannot be a agarose gel electrophoresis. Then we have thought of various different strategies. So if there is a single mismatch, the binding and the cutting will happen. If there is a double mismatch, the binding and cutting will not happen. So the different readout modes for the detection of sickle cell anemia we have thought of is the agarose gel signature, the capillary electrophoresis, and the fluorescence readout, and most importantly, the lateral flow, that is the visual detection mode to diagnose a particular disorder, firstly the sickle cell anemia. Now the chemistry of this particular strip, it's a commercial strip that we have taken from the company, and we have applied the CRISPR-Cas chemistry to this particular strip. So this is a very simple assay. If as it's similar to the pregnancy kit, if there are two bands showing up in a particular strip, that means it's a positive sample, and or it is the sickle cell substrate. And if it's only a control band or a single band, then it is a negative sample or the wild type sample. So now the chemistry is the CRISPR. So there is the amplification is done in a particular tube. Suppose we have a blinded sample. So now we are doing the amplification with the biotin label primer. So the amplification that produces or generates the product is having the biotin labeled amplicon, and whenever we put this biotin labeled amplicon as a substrate into a tube that is having CRISPR-Cas or the RNP complex into it, that is the cRNA and the tracer RNA and the Cas protein. So the tracer RNA you can see is FAM labeled. So this is very important in this case, because so whenever there is a binding in the tube, that means the sample is specific. So then it moves upward towards then it moves upward due to the capillary action, and due to the biotin labeled amplicon, it just accumulate all these the molecules are accumulated towards the test this line, which actually shows the test band. And when there is a no presence of the substrate, then it only shows up the control band.
So Ridhim, can you summarize in a few slides?
Yes.
Okay.
So then we have a prototype in our hand in which we have seen that the wild type substrate, there is no test band. In the sickle cell substrate, there is the two bands are available. So then we have actually named this technology as FN-Cas9 editor linked uniform detection assay, that is the Feluda, the point of care diagnostics. So this name is given by Dr. Devajyoti's wife. So this is a detective, Bengali detective. So it actually detects the wild type or the sickle cell substrate very specifically. That is why we have given this name. And then we went to the sickle cell camp, and we were very saddened to see the proportion of the sickle cell the carriers that are present there. So we have checked whether this Feluda is actually sensitive, or it can detect the sickle cell traits or the sickle cell heterozygotes that are present in the population. And we have seen that yes, the Feluda can actually discriminate between the SCD and the carriers very specifically. So now how this Feluda is actually comes into this SARS-CoV-2 detection. It's a very simple strategy that we have used. We have normally taken this swab and the saliva samples, and then the RNA extraction happened. And whenever there is a RNA extraction, then similarly the RNA is converted into cDNA, and the cDNA, and then the amplification is done by the normal RT-PCR. So this is the reverse transcriptase PCR. It is not the qRT-PCR. So now the amplification has been done, and after this amplification, there is Now you have the bitin-labeled amplicon, and we are generally putting the dead FN Cas9 RNP complex similarly labeled with the FAM. So the strategy is similar as I have already mentioned for the sickle cell diagnostic assay. So we had a prototype in our hand, and we have shown that yes, this lateral flow strip is actually working with the dead FN Cas9 chemistry that we have shown very specifically to detect the SARS-CoV-2 samples. Now, the regions that we have targeted are majorly the S and the N genes, and the limit of detection that we have checked is 100 to the limit of detection is the 100 to 10 copies. This is the quantification shows here, and not only if to reduce the human biasness, as there are the strips that are actually showing the band intensity. So we have actually developed an app that is the Topse. So Topse is another detective that I have already shown. So it's a companion. He's a companion of Feluda in this particular detective novels. So you can see the peaks. So in the positive sample, there is a so it's an phone-based app that actually quantifies the positive and the negative sample very accurately. And then we have checked whether the Feluda can shows the concordance with the QRT-PCR, and we have seen that this data shows that it is inversely proportional to the CT value. So these are the Topse value that you can see in the lower panel. So if there is a the viral load is very high that you see, so the Feluda signal is also high, but the CT value is low. So we have shown that yes, the Feluda shows high concordance with the QRT-PCR. Then we have checked various samples. And detect and shows that the Feluda can predict the SARS-CoV-2 outcomes very accurately with the sensitivity of 100 and specificity of 96.7%. And we have also tried, and we are actually trying for a possible home testing to reduce all these particular equipments that are the RT-PCR and the normal thermocycler that we are using. So after the RNA extraction, we are actually putting the whole master mix into a tube that has the components for the isothermal amplification. So it's a technique that the RT-RPA that majorly many groups are actually showing for this CRISPR-based diagnostics. So in this, only a single heat block is required. So all this reaction is putting at a particular temperature, and the amplification happens, and we can actually diagnose in 30 to 35 minutes. Then we have also tried to reduce this particular instrument, that is the heat block, and we have tried to consider. We have actually considered all these ethical concerns, and we have put the samples very safely at different body parts, which has this different temperatures range, and we have seen that yes, this can be, or this could be a possible home testing for the Feluda. So this is the roadmap that is very it's very important to show, because it's a day that we still remember that January 28th we have started this technology. We have started the thinking that yes, we can actually couple Feluda to detect the SARS-CoV-2 detection, and March 22nd we had a prototype in our hand. Then we have also filed the patent. Then thankfully, we have at May 6th, we licensed this to Tata and Sons very gratefully. And then September 20th, we got the DCGI approval for the commercial launch. And then the ICMR also issues the advisory for the Feluda use. And yesterday only the news came out that Tata launches the Feluda kit for 1 million assay monthly. So this is the most important slide, and most important, the touchy slide for me. And I would also like to acknowledge various members of our lab as a team. As a team, I am representing this. Dr. Deepti Jain from ICMR Nagpur providing so many samples. So we are in a pandemic, we are not short of the samples because of so many help that we are getting from them, and various collaborators worldwide that and all this SMDC lab members. I'd also like to thank IGIB for providing infrastructure and Merck for providing this reagents and all. And we are very generously funded with the Tata due to the in this pandemic when we got the collaboration with Tata and Sons. So I'd like to end my slide with a beautiful line that Jennifer Doudna has actually said. So CRISPR is a wonderful tool that allows one to ask and answer questions that were impossible to address previously and will help solve problems for humanity. And I think it is doing justice to these lines. And as I am giving this, as I also am very grateful to Dr. Devajyoti who gave me this opportunity as a female representative. So these lines marked my brain, Gairi and Selka, is that which is said by Charpentier, Dr. Charpentier. So she said, my wish is that this will provide a positive message to the young girls who would like to follow the path of science and to show them that women in science can also have an impact through the research that they are performing. So thank you. I'd like to take the questions if you might have.
Yeah. Very nice talk, Rhythm. We are running a little bit behind, so you need to give very short answers. Okay. The first question is, since there are mutations in the spike protein, how do you take care of it with Feluda?
So we are actually, sorry, am I?
Go ahead.
So we are actually taking care of the mutations, or we are checking the mutations day by day. So we have screened so many guide RNAs, and the guide RNA that we are actually taking is now it is not showing any mutation, and we have checked whether on daily basis that there is no kind of mutation that is incorporating.
All right. Okay, fine. The second quick answer to the question is, can Feluda give quantitative information on RNA load?
Yeah, so I have shown a data that is a very fascinating data for us. The Feluda values, that is the TOPSE values, it is actually correlating with the QRT-PCR. So if you have it's a semi-qualitative kind of thing. So if you have a high viral load in a cell, then the TOPSE values are very high, and we have shown that the CT value, it is correlating with the CT value. So you can say yes, it is a semi-qualitative kind of data.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Rhythm.